All right, welcome back to the GoatCast podcast. I know it's been a while. A lot in life has changed. Well, not a lot has changed, but a lot's been going on in both of our lives. So it's just been hard to get together. But here we are again. I am CW, fresh with the baldness, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, BigNige. What's going on?
How much? I'm excited to be back. I know it's been a while. I know y'all missed our voices, but what a time to be a basketball fan.
Yeah, a lot has happened in the 2-3 weeks we've been gone, but we're back and we'll be in full force for the next couple weeks, hopefully. We got to start off something we missed. It's far removed, but we missed it. As I predicted, the Boston Celtics are your 2024 NBA champions. Did it in 5 games. I predicted 6, so I didn't I respected Dallas Mavericks a little too much, but Boston got them out of there. Some interesting things happened in this series. We saw the Boston pretty much be dominant for 4 games. I mean, that game 4, I think they want to go back to Boston. That just was very uncharacteristic of that team. We saw some good from the not role players, but Drew Holiday, Al Horford played some good basketball. But surprisingly, Jaylen Brown walked away with the Finals MVP. So yeah, and Luka and Kyrie have to go back to the drawing board. So what are your thoughts? Boston Celtics 2024 champions. Surprised by that Finals MVP. What's your thoughts on that?
So when I made my prediction that the Mavs would upset the Boston Celtics, that was under the impression that Luka would be Luka and Kyrie would not be Cancun Kyrie. But we saw some glaring holes with Dallas, and most importantly, Luka Doncic's defense got exposed. And he's never been a very great defender, but to just get cooked on the NBA final on the biggest stage when they're hunting you, when they're putting up graphics about, you have the highest like blow by percentage in the entire playoffs, probably in recent NBA history. I mean, if your defense is that bad, I mean that's very telling. And your team went out in 5 games. I still picked Dallas. I thought that Luka would just be the undisputed best player in this series, and nobody would even be close to him. But Jaylen Brown, Tatum, sometimes Drew Holiday in flashes, they all stepped up and they played very well. And especially Porzingis, who I think he tipped the scale in Boston's favor early on in this series, which led to the eventual smackdown that would further ensue. But they had Kyrie's number. Kyrie could not do hardly anything against him. He didn't get any shots he wanted, and if he did, he was finally open enough, but then he just could not connect. And that's just what happens when you are playing against people who are familiar with your game, who play with you, practice with you. Like they just know where you want to go on the floor, and how to contest your shots and your crazy layups, especially with Kyrie. So Boston just was too deep. I'm not really surprised that Jaylen Brown won the Finals MVP because Tatum, he did if you're a new basketball fan, you might think Tatum kind of played very poorly, but he did all of the winning things. Crashed the glass, was passing the ball out of double teams. He was taking good shots in the paint. Some perimeter shots were a little iffy, but I mean, he has the capability to make those shots. So he's keeping the defense honest by taking those shots. But Jaylen Brown definitely benefited from the attention that Jason Tatum, warned for that series. So he just took care of business. He made it look a little bit more efficient. Both of those are your 1A, 1B, your 1-2 punch. Role players stepped up for Boston. So nothing but congrats and hats off to him.
Yeah, hats off to the Boston Celtics. Another one of my predictions came true. I did say a team from the East would win the championship this year. Came to fruition. So, it's hard to be right all the time. But yeah, once again, congrats. Jaylen Brown, I think he got it done on both ends. That's probably what helped his case to be the finals MVP. Tatum was fine defensively, but just the work Jaylen Brown did with both Luka and Kyrie pretty much sealed the deal. Kyrie was a non-factor, which after that Minnesota series, we thought Kyrie was back. He was, 2016 Kyrie, but wasn't the case. I don't know if the bright lights were too big. He's been there before multiple times, so I don't know I don't think that's the case. I just think Boston was just that good. So just to add on to that, could we see the beginnings of another dynasty? Is Boston, have they put together something that can, since lately we've seen no team has gotten past the second round after winning the championship in the past, I believe, 5 years. So can they get past that curse? Can they debunk that and get back into that dynastic region where Golden State once was?
I think it's a little too early to say that. Getting past the second round, I see Boston having no problem doing that. However, repeating and even potentially three-peating, I think that's a bit more unrealistic given how their roster is constructed. I think they're going to have to make some more moves. I think Tatum and Brown as a duo, we know that works, but it's about those other pieces. How will Derek White continue to hold up? Will Drew Holiday, with his age, will he continue to be that two-way monster that he played like in the postseason? We already see kinks in Porzingis in his health, and can he stay on the floor? Because he's a big part of why they won so many games during the regular season. And of course, he played a big role in the playoffs, especially those first couple games in the finals before he eventually went down with injury. So I'm just curious on those other guys. I'm not really worried about Tatum and Brown. They look like they're here to stay and make their mark in the NBA. I'm just not sure about the other guys in terms of the consistency that they'll need to play with, because the East will get better. Philly was going to get better, New York, and we'll talk about those teams here in a little bit, but those teams are knocking at the door. So they have to make sure they're playing their best and not having those kind of stinkers that they can have at the worst possible times.
Well, that kind of perfectly segues into what we'll be talking about next. So I think there's a couple of teams that are gearing up to make sure Boston is not a dynasty, and that leads us into the free agency talk. A lot of teams wasted no time once that clock hit midnight to make some moves, and we saw some interesting moves. We're going to start with maybe one of the bigger ones with the Dallas Mavericks, who we just talked about, came up short in the NBA Finals. Maybe need another piece that's been there before. They got that. Klay Thompson will be a Dallas Maverick in a huge sign trade. What was it, 5-team, I believe? It included the Spurs, a lot of teams.
It was the main teams that really benefited besides just picks and cash were mainly Golden State and obviously Dallas. So there's a lot of names that were in place in this, but the main one is Klay Thompson. He will leave the team he's been with ever since he came into the league, the Warriors. He was part of that big three, that dynasty big three, the first one to leave. I'm not surprised, but so is Klay a good pickup for the Dallas Mavericks? I mean, Dallas will be losing Josh Green, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Derrick Jones Jr., which we'll talk about when we get to the Clippers. But losing those three could hurt, but there's Klay, and also they added Najee Marshall through free agency from the Minnesota Timberwolves. No, from the New Orleans Pelicans. So with Klay and Najee, does that help Dallas's case to maybe get back to that finals? I would say so. I think because you had, PJ Washington, I think they relied a little bit too heavy on him and Derrick Jones Jr., who we know these guys are good role players and they can play their roles at a high level, but I don't think the consistency is there. When Dallas needed to make a lot of perimeter shots in that series and kind of throughout the playoffs, sometimes the role players will just go cold. I think with Marshall, you get a bona fide 3-and-D wing, more athletic, and definitely a really good shooter. Obviously, Derrick Jones Jr. is, one of the most athletic people in the league, but you kind of sacrifice the athleticism, the cutting aspect and the lobs that he can generate, and you sacrifice that for Marshall, who's a better shooter. I would say they're comparable on defense. I think Derrick Jones Jr. is a little bit better on guarding like wings. I think Najee Marshall's more suited to guard guards, but he can guard some wings too. He's just not as long as Derrick Jones Jr., but I think he's a little bit bigger and more physical. So I think he can bother, some wings and some guards as well. Klay Thompson is the biggest X factor because the way how he can impact the game, because obviously he is a phenomenal shooter. We understand that, but we know he's not the defensive ball stopper that he used to be. And so it kind of bodes the question of which version of Klay Thompson will the Dallas Mavericks get? And that also depends on his role. What kind of role are they going to look to start him? Are they going to look to bring him off the bench? How long are they going to play him? All these things matter to a rhythm guy like Klay Thompson, because if you're inconsistent with his minutes, he's shown you in Golden State with an inconsistent role, he's going to be an inconsistent shooter. Now, inconsistency for him is still probably the cream of the crop in terms of three-point shooters, because he still almost shot 40% this past season on a very inconsistent role. And he's had stretches where he shot well above 40%. But I think he's definitely a step in the right direction for Dallas. And I think in terms of a championship, I think they need to get a couple more pieces. I think they need a nice solid 4 option. Maybe if they could somehow swindle a Jeremy Grant or something, just a guy like that who can kind of muck it up for you. And it has good luck. But I mean, the Trailblazers ain't doing nothing. They ain't come off old Grant.
He's got a hefty contract.
But just something like that, I think that would be another piece that could push them back more into okay, now they're taking an even closer step to the finals. But Klay and Marshall, I think they're really good pickups, but they don't address everything that Dallas needs to get back to the finals for.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think it's it's a blockbuster in that you move somebody that you never thought would leave the team they were with. But like you said, we look at Klay as being terrible last season. He wasn't terrible. His role changed and he didn't adapt as well as most probably thought he could or would. And that's fine. He's just going to have to find his place. And I think a fresh start might be good for him, finding his place. He's not going to get the touches he got with Golden State. We'll see how he handles that because Luka likes to hold the ball a lot. Kyrie likes the ball in his hands, but Kyrie will get it to him. Luka will get it to him. So can he hit those spot-up jumpers? Let's hope so. Najee Marshall, I think he's not exactly an upgrade, but he's a good piece to get. They still probably have some things to do over this offseason to, maybe put some more pieces in that will help them. I think cutting some fat like they did with Tim Hardaway Jr. Josh Green gave him some good minutes, but, he was expendable, as was Derrick Jones Jr., who, did well, but the big lights were too much for him. So he kind of faded, and now you put somebody that has experience. So for this Dallas, it doesn't make them that much more of contenders, but it does keep them afloat out west. So with that said, we're going to move over to Golden State, who, of course, lose Klay Thompson. They also waived Chris Paul, which probably wasn't too you probably saw that coming, but, Chris is up there, and Dario Saric has left for the Nuggets. So they had some interesting additions. Kyle Anderson from Minnesota played some pretty good minutes for Minnesota in those big time playoff matchups. But the biggest one is Buddy Hield, who through a signing trade from the Sixers, I think he was involved in all of that. He's coming over to the Golden State Warriors. So can he fill the role that Clay is leaving them right now? Can Buddy Hield be that guy that can, be that second splash brother or splash cousin maybe in the absence of Klay Thompson?
Ooh, that's some really big shoes to fill. In terms of just shot making ability, he has a pretty good chance to fill those shoes, especially if we're talking about this version of Klay that he's replacing. Obviously, he's nowhere near the peak Klay Thompson.
Okay,
We get that.
definitely.
But this version of Klay, the watered down version of Klay Thompson, can Buddy Hield, cash in on some of those looks that Klay Thompson was missing last season? I think that's well within his capabilities as a 3-point shooter. I don't think he's going to be nowhere near the off-ball threat that Klay Thompson was, and that gravity that he still commands, even when he's not making the most of his shots, he still commands the attention. You can't just leave him open. I think Klay, even though he's definitely regressed on the defensive end, I still think he's still better than Buddy Hield. So I think that's going to hurt them. Like in the last postseason with the Sixers, I mean, he was damn near unplayable. Like his defense was atrocious. Yeah. And I look to maybe the Warriors, if they are going to play him in heavy minutes, to conjure up some kind of defensive schemes with him and Curry, where both of those guys aren't getting picked on, at least too much. But just in terms of shot making ability, I think he'll hold his own. I think he'll put up some decent numbers on some decent efficiency. I think Kyle Anderson, I don't think you'd play him with Draymond, so I think he'll kind of be like the backup, playmaking five that Draymond is, because he can do similar things to Draymond. Neither one of them like to shoot the ball that well, although I believe Draymond is less hesitant than Kyle Anderson, but I also think Kyle Anderson can hit those threes if called upon. So I look to see what else they do. I'm hearing some Lauri Markkanen floating around Golden State. If they can do that, then that puts them in a way better spot than where they are now. Because, those pieces that they got are good. Losing Chris Paul for nothing, I mean, nobody was going to come off of anything for a 75-year-old point guard making $30 million. So, I mean, yeah, you kind of had to do what you had to do with that. So wrap that up and this doesn't put Golden State nowhere trajectory. I mean, they might be a play-in if anything, but that's no different than what they were this past season. So I look for them to make some more moves and maybe solidify or punch their ticket to the postseason. But right now their ceiling is play-in with those moves.
Yeah, pretty much echo that. They definitely have more moves to make, and if not, I don't even know if they're play-in material. So staying out west, the Los Angeles Clippers. I thought they were back. I thought this was their year to do it. They let me down again. They fooled me. I let them fool me twice, so that's my fault. But so they lose Paul George to the Philadelphia Sixers. We'll talk about that once we get to that team. But they re-signed James Harden. They add Nicholas Batum, Mo Bamba. Of course, they re-signed Kawhi. Clippers. What do we think about that? Was that a huge loss for them? I believe they re-signed Russell Westbrook as well, but they're looking to trade him. I mean, they've signed him for $5, so I don't think it's going to be hard for them to trade him if they absolutely have to. But are the Clippers even a play-in team as currently constructed?
As currently constructed, I'm thinking they're going to miss the playoffs. I mean, with Kawhi's injury history, as great as he is, you just cannot count on him to stay on the floor for enough games for them to. Could they make the playoffs? Potentially, but this is a deep league. The West is loaded. They lost Paul George for absolutely nothing, considering the haul they had to use to get him from OKC. They lost a Shea, they lost a whole bunch of picks, and then you just lose him for nothing. I mean, that's just inexcusable. Like, I don't care what they say about this new salary cap rules and all that stuff. You can't not get anything for a guy like Paul George, who's easily giving you about 24 points a night. So, I mean, very good two-way. He's a very good shooter, big long wing. So I just don't get it. Obviously, an all-star. I mean, he shows up. I mean, he might not be the best of the best, but he shows up and he plays at a very high level. So, I mean, Derrick Jones Jr., he's nice. Mo Bamba, sure. I mean, ain't nobody sneezing that. He gonna probably rack up some DNPs. So, I mean, I'm just not very convinced on this Clippers team. I think this is they're gonna welcome their new arena with some L's and a whole lot of unhappy fans. I can't think of too many positives for this Clippers team going into the season as currently constructed, because you lost your second and sometimes best player for nothing, and that's never a good thing, especially if you're a team like the Los Angeles Clippers.
Absolutely, and I don't see any big names out there for them to get. Maybe they can somehow swindle marketing, but I don't even think that puts them over the hump. They don't have. I mean, it all stems to Kawhi Leonard and his health, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like his knee will ever be 100%. So he will never stay on the court long enough to really carry that team. And James Harden is, he might as well be Chris Paul's age. He's about 63 to Chris Paul's 75. So, if they're banking on James Harden to get them to the next level, then they're doomed. So, I mean, I was pulling for the Clippers. I wanted them to finally get out of the shadow of the Lakers and bring one to LA. They tried. Well, I mean, I guess they tried. They never got it together. Never could keep their two stars on the court at the same time. So, unfortunately, I think they're doomed. And Steve Ballmer's going to spend all that money, and there'll be 5 people in the arena every night. So, with that said, a team that might take their spot when it comes down to it, the New Orleans Pelicans, I think they got a little better. They traded for DeJounte Murray, who had been in talks with numerous teams. We thought he would go to the Lakers, Spurs, other teams had his name, but ultimately he went to the Pelicans. They lost a lot of players. Of course, we talked about Najee Marshall, Larry Nance Jr., Cody Zeller, Giannis Valanciunas. So they did lose some. They did lose some pieces, but do you believe that DeJounte Murray, now with CJ McCollum, who doesn't have to play the point now, Brandon Ingram, Zion, if he's healthy, can they sneak into maybe a prominent role in out east as a contender?
Well, West, but I'm not really too high on DeJounte Murray. I think the haul they got was a bit of an overpay for a guy like him, because they're talking about his defensive versatility, but I've seen on a lot of occasions him getting cooked. And I don't want to just blame how bad the Hawks defense is, because their defense wasn't that terrible, but the forefront of that defense, who everybody's talking about all defense, and he's this defensive-minded guard, yeah, everybody was getting cooked, just like the rest of them boys out there in Atlanta. So, getting back to the fit, I think with the addition of DeJounte Murray, I think that means that they're going to have to move Brandon Ingram. I think salary-wise,
you think so?
If you're thinking about the extension that Ingram was already eligible to sign, there's no talks about him extending with that team. Like, they don't want to extend Ingram, and so in terms of fit, I just don't see a situation where Murray and Brandon Ingram are on the same team, because they're both ball dominant players. And both obviously struggle mightily off the ball. And the most important person that you would want the ball in their hands is obviously Zion Williams at this stage, or Williamson, excuse me. But I think Zion should have the ball in his hands more. I think everybody else, they need to build around Zion and have more off-ball 3-and-D wings, maybe a playmaker here and there, which I think Murray can step into that role a little bit. Definitely better than CJ McCollum. Not the greatest shooter, so that could be a potential conflict going into a deep playoff run. But I definitely don't think Brandon Ingram is going to be there to stay. I think at the longest he could stay is potentially the trade deadline, play himself out of New Orleans, and hopefully I would have liked him on a team like the Kings, but obviously they just picked up, they made a move and got DeMar DeRozan. So again, we'll talk about that a little later. But I just don't see a scenario with Murray coming in. Brandon Ingram has to be out the door, and I don't know why, or they haven't made a move yet with Ingram. But
all right, so that is the New Orleans Pelicans. So let's move over to the East. We haven't talked about them much. The New York Knicks, they're win now. They went out and got Mikal Bridges from the Brooklyn Nets. Didn't have to lose a ton. Not a ton that was much needed. Bojan Bogdanovic, Alex Burks. But actually, Alex Burks left from free agency. And they lost Isaiah Hartenstein from free agency as well. But yeah, so they bring in Mikal Bridges. They re-signed OG Anunoby. So are the Knicks, are they the real deal? Do they need to are they maybe hurting at the bigs position and maybe need to add something there, or as constructed? Does this move them or keep them? They were number 2 out East last year. Does that keep them where they were, or are they now a bigger threat?
I think this Mikal Bridges trade definitely gives them what they were missing. Obviously, with his 3-point shooting capabilities and his defensive versatility on the wing, both of those things are definitely very good additions for the New York Knicks. Losing Hartenstein was a very big loss for them, especially with Mitchell Robinson's injury history. So I would think that they're going to be making some kind of move to get a backup big. Julius Randle, I think he could be very he's now the piece that could sink this ship or get this ship riding to a potential finals berth. I think his play is very, very pivotal to where this team goes next. And they have some flexibility, but they did have to re-sign OG based off the capital they had to use to get him. You couldn't just let him walk. You had to pay him. We understand that. So obviously, I think paying him that $212 was a little bit of an overpay, but it was either that or risk him walking for nothing, which you've already given up assets to get him, i.e. RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. So that being said, you have a lot more versatility with this team. You could definitely do like a Warriors like death lineup, go super small ball, slide Randle at the 5 if you need to. You could try OG at the center, and you could really just take Randle off the floor if he's having a stinker. And I'm not saying that to just kill the center position. I'm just saying in terms of switching everything, you have OG
going small with that team.
You have Mikal Bridges, but you have wings who are the cream of the crop in terms of 3-and-D wings and defensive versatility. And of course, you got Josh Hart, who's no slouch on that end. Obviously Brunson isn't the best defender, but you have him running that show with those other interchangeable parts that can spell for his defensive woes. So you have all those things, and this is really good for them to play a team like Boston. Like Boston pretty much can switch everything. They're fast, they're quick, they're mobile. And this kind of puts New York on that same playing field. They're not as big as Boston, but they have the versatility that they lack in a potential matchup that would have put them against Boston. So I look for them to be a top 3 team in the East. I won't disrespect Philly, but we'll see how the pieces move and how everything aligns. But they're definitely solidified themselves as a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference and a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, but speaking of Julius Randle, do you try to throw out feelers out there, maybe move him because he might be the odd man out? You know, he was an all-star in 2024, but the nucleus they created with him being gone with the shoulder injury is pretty. You know, they're a pretty tight-knit group now. Josh Hart and was it Dante DiVincenzo? I can never say his name, but they got a pretty good squad right there, and Randall might be the guy you might look at moving.
Could. I definitely think it'd be in their best interest. He is an all-star level player. Let's see how it works. Let's maybe give it till the deadline. We know without him, we are still a formidable team in the Eastern Conference. And, you know, maybe he can play very good, but just not a fit for us. So maybe we can recover some draft capital, some assets to, you know, keep this puzzle moving and maybe even get that backup big. You know, maybe there's teams shopping a big. You know, maybe Drummond is kind of stinking it up in the Sixers like he did in the past before. So maybe, you know, maybe they can steal him from the Sixers and work some moves out that way. But I think it's to their best interest to at least hold on to Randall until at least maybe the trade deadline and see if it fits, keep him, and if it doesn't, then you can move him and get some other pieces.
Okay. Well, yeah. So the Knicks looking. I mean, they've been making some really good moves. Their front office has been doing doing their homework. And another team that their front office needs, they might need a raise. Stan Presti with the OKC Thunder, because they were able to flip their weak link and Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso, and they bring in who we just talked about, Isaiah Hartenstein from the New York Knicks. OKC's looking dangerous out there. I think those are huge upgrades, and yeah, so you know, Shea and those boys got some new blood to work with. So, what do you think about OKC's moves, and does this make them even more contenders?
I definitely think this is what the pieces that they needed to get to the next level. Obviously, they were the 1 seed and they played phenomenal during the regular season. But in the postseason, one big thing that I know I led with, and I know a couple other people have said it, Josh Giddey was just unplayable for the postseason. You know, terrible on defense. He needs the ball in his hands to be effective. Not the greatest off the ball. Really could just be left open. They had Dallas bigs guarding him, if you remember in that series, because he just wasn't a threat. And that's no shade against Josh Giddey. I think he's a growing prospect and he can, you know, do some things for you, but he needs the ball in his hands, which is why I like his fit on a team like Chicago. Get into that another time for sure. But you flip him for Alex Caruso, man. That's a great 3-and-D wing. You know, he's shown some playmaking capabilities. You know, just the defensive-minded guard. That's what you needed, especially in the Western Conference when you got, you know, Lukas and Kyrie's and Anthony Edwards. You got Caruso was the guy you can put on them to save a guy like Shea, a Luke Dort, you know, prevent Chet Holmgren from getting in foul trouble because you got someone who can stay in front of these guys. So, and obviously you got Hartenstein. So if you run up against a team like the Timberwolves, well, they have a 2-big lineup. Well, now you guys can go double bigs. You can put Chet up to 4. You can put Hartenstein up to 5, you know, and you won't really be missing anything. Hartenstein's a great offensive rebounder. He's got great touch around the basket. You know, he can move his feet. So he's a very good backup big man, or even you could put him as your starting big man in spot minutes or certain matchups. I think he can hold his own, especially against a team like the Timberwolves. And, you know, sometimes if you want to play a big lineup against the Lakers or something along those lines, I mean, it can work. So this definitely puts them, obviously they solidify their ticket as a top 3 team in the Western Conference. And I think Shea, if he comes back with that MVP mindset, I think the voters will be crazy to get it wrong twice if he has a similar season with what this team is constructed as.
Yeah, out west, the rich get richer in OKC's case. So I only see them improving off of last year. I think the chemistry will be there. Caruso's a guy that can fit almost any system, any team. And Hartenstein, he's that toughness that they might need down low. Could have really used him against Dallas. He probably would have made a huge difference. And Caruso, they needed both of those guys, and now they got him. So Dallas, now the ball's in your court because now they made the moves to probably counter what you have. So we'll go back east and talk about the Philadelphia Sixers, who made just as major of a splash as maybe Dallas did, as they get the services of Paul George, who signed a 4-year deal, leaving the Clippers. The Clippers get absolutely nothing from that. So yeah, that terrible business. But they also bring in Eric Gordon, Caleb Martin, and Andre Drummond, which all solid pieces. They re-signed Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre Jr. They've made a move to where Boston better come to play, because I think there's another big dog out east. And then we just talked about the Knicks. It might be a bloodbath. That little cakewalk they had this year, I don't think they're going to have that next year. It's going to be a bloodbath, just like the West was. So what do you think about the moves the Sixers made?
I think the Sixers have definitely made a very good moves this offseason. If you want to start with first and foremost that you didn't mention, Tobias Harris is gone. Throw a parade already.
Man,
what Stephen A. Smith said about Kwame Brown, y'all should be celebrating right now. Y'all got rid of Tobias Butt Cheeks Harris, man. He gave you absolutely nothing. You replaced his services with a guy like Paul George, which for all the good things you can say about Paul George, all-star, good scorer, great shooter, etc., etc., I'm a little bit concerned about the injury history. You have two of your three main guys are injury prone, Joel Embiid and Paul George. So if Paul George can stay healthy, though, and we're just going to assume health, this puts the Sixers team, as I have them as the number 2 team out east. I'm not going to, dismiss the champs and the Boston Celtics. They play their cards right, and Boston don't get their act together, they will upset the Boston Celtics and potentially make it to the NBA Finals. Andre Drummond, I love the pickup. Solid rebounder. He's been kind of reviving his career out in Chicago, so I love what I'm seeing from him. Obviously, we love the re-signings of Maxey and Kelly Oubre Jr. Keeps their wing versatility, and you got him and Paul George to switch off of everything. So maybe Paul George doesn't have to guard the best player every night, so he can give you more offensively because you have wings who can kind of come in there and spell for those defensive matchups. But the biggest thing is Caleb Martin. I mean, what he has done for Miami, I don't know what Miami's got going on over there. I know they have a phenomenal development team, and they just find these diamond in the rough players. And I'm already liking what they got with this the center like Kevin or something Ware, who's a 7-foot big man who can put on the floor, rebound, shoot, etc., etc. Yeah. I like what he is for that team, and I don't know where Caleb Martin didn't fit in their future plans, because it's not like they're going anywhere anytime soon. But to get him, a great scorer off the bench, shooting can be a little inconsistent, but he's not afraid of the moment, and that's what you need in a city like Philadelphia, because those fans will eat you alive. You need some dogs on that roster to take you home, and Caleb Martin can do that. So I don't really care about Eric Gordon. I think he's kind of washed. I think he can still shoot. He can still space the floor. I'm not going to disrespect the man, but what I saw him do on the Suns doesn't give me much optimism going into him playing for the Sixers. So, but I think he's a solid player. All those pieces work. They seem like a seamless fit with that roster. So it's just a matter of let's see what Embiid comes out there. If we can get MVP Embiid, we don't get pandemic P, and we get playoff P like we should. And of course, Tyrese Maxey. I think they are definitely a top 2 team in the Eastern Conference.
I agree, and much like I said about OKC, the rich get richer in the Sixers case. They lose a Tobias Harris and get a Paul George. How many teams can say they did that? So, you dump one piece and get a much better piece. Now, like you said, health is the key. If he can stay on the court, maybe the Clippers are just cursed, and that was just a bad place for him. And now he's back east, and maybe we can see Pacer, Paul George. So hopefully we can see that coming into fruition for Philadelphia Sixers. But let's keep moving. The Sacramento Kings, as you mentioned earlier, they have made a pretty big splash with former All-Star DeMar DeRozan in I believe that was a signing trade that they did with him to get him. So they lose Harrison Barnes, maybe not tragic, but he'll go to the Spurs, and they keep Malik Monk for 4 more years, Alex Lynn. So what do you think about the Sacramento Kings? They kind of, they had their big year in, 2023. They had their, okay year. I think they were top 3-4 and got bounced by Golden State. We thought they would have a better year. They didn't. So adding DeMar DeRozan really bumped the Sacramento Kings back into that top elite out west.
I still think they're a piece away from maybe talking about like the top of the Western Conference, but I think he can win them some more games. I think this could put them, and we talked about this a little earlier, but I think this could put them in the 5-6 range, like comfortably, and maybe even crack to the 4 seed, depending, because they are a young team. De'Aaron Fox is looking for that supermax extension. He said, the reports are out there that he wants to wait and see how the front office continues to construct the roster behind him and Sabonis. I'd like for them to get another big body with Sabonis before I want to say they're true contenders. I think some certain teams could just kind of beat them up inside. But DeMar DeRozan, I mean, he's definitely an upgrade at that small forward position, or if you want to play him at the 2, whatever you want to do. He's a good scorer. Not the greatest shooter, but a very good scorer. And in playoff series, when De'Aaron Fox isn't really playing his best, it's a bonus. He's kind of getting punked by somebody like a Draymond or a physical player. You can give the ball to DeMar DeRozan now. You don't have to rely so heavily on Murray and Malik Monk to kind of carry you, and Kevin Huerter if he's not shooting the ball well. You have a bona fide 20 points per game scorer who can come in and do his thing. So that's good for them. And obviously keeping Malik Monk, very good for them. They needed to keep him no matter what, because they could not have him go to a team like Denver, who if they had his services, that would be a nightmare. So
after losing KCP, they could have used him.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, like I said, this puts them, I think, top 5 in the Western Conference, definitely trending in the upward direction, but I still think they're a piece away before I want to call them a contender.
Okay. Yeah, I completely agree. Another team we'll touch on real quick. They did make some moves, and hopefully for the better. My team, the San Antonio Spurs, will bring in Chris Paul for a year. Also got Harrison Barnes through those Kings moves. So Chris Paul with Victor Wembanyama, will that change the Spurs' fortunes as they possibly move from garbage to maybe being okay next season? Is Chris Paul one of the pieces they need? I know they got the rookie Castle, supposed to be a solid defender, so hopefully he can earn his spot on the team. Harrison Barnes, we'll take him. So, but does that help the Spurs in a way that moves the needle any?
I don't think those moves are going to move the Spurs anywhere. I mean, I think you can make an argument that having some more vets on that roster can kind of further along the growth of some of these other young players. I think you can maybe make an argument that Lob City Part 2 will be in San Antonio, because the amount of lobs that Wemby will get from a guy like Chris Paul, definitely more than what he got this past season. So I look for Wemby's scoring to, increase. I look for obviously, the rest of his stats to go up, but especially the scoring department. I think a point guard like a Chris Paul, play him in spot minutes, he can get Wemby some easy buckets, which is what he's been sorely lacking in terms of the point guard position. He can maybe even, mentor along with Harrison Barnes. They can mentor some of these younger guys. Understand that Wemby is your meal ticket, and you got to get him the ball, and find him throughout the game as the Spurs were doing, in the later part of last season. But maybe they can set the tone early. Wemby's got to get the ball a couple times before you even look to shoot. Just because he's the guy and he generates offense so seamlessly because he's such a freak athlete. So. Will they make the playoffs? No, probably not. I don't think they've gotten that much better, but could they be a play-in? If you get the best version of Chris Paul at this age, you get some consistency from Harrison Barnes, play-in could be in their future, but I wouldn't put my money on it, no.
Well, that's my hope. If we can just make it, if we just get into the range of the play-in, I'll be happy because that means our future will brighten up once we get some true talent around Wemby. I think Chris Paul's step in the right direction. He's a solid vet. I mean, he's on his last legs, and he's just maintaining staying in the NBA. But I think he'll be a positive for that Spurs team. I think he'll work well with Pop. I think he can be an extension of Pop in some ways, with those young guys, and hopefully get them with the mentality and get them in some type of rhythm and system instead of what we saw last year where it was just helter-skelter. They would play great for a half, and then completely fall apart in the second half, and just there was nothing. So that was the San Antonio Spurs, who, they're trying to get better. Another team that some people didn't think they tried to get better, that would be your Los Angeles Lakers, who surprisingly had the 55th pick, and that was the most talked about pick in all of the draft this past year, last couple of weeks ago, Bronny James. So LeBron gets to live his gets one of his bucket lists checked with being able to play with his son, which is, that's a big deal. If I was LeBron, I would want to do the same thing if it was at all possible. So, that's a cool little thing. We heard the word nepotism used all week after Bronny was drafted. And, yes, that's a thing. And many players you see in the NBA with Junior, with a name you probably recognize from the 80s, 90s, some of that played a part into it too, So I'm not going to fault the Lakers like some have just crucified them for, drafting Bronny James. I just hope, and Bronny doesn't seem like the type that wanted that meal ticket that just said, get me in, Dad, and, I'm just going to rest on my laurels. I think he's going to work hard to get better. He's had a tough time so far in the Summer League, but that's neither here nor there. Who cares about the Summer League? But the big thing for the Lakers is they re-signed, he dropped his option. LeBron James re-signs with the Lakers for 2 more years, close to the max. They've been kind of quiet so far. They're usually one of those teams that wheels and deals. They struck out with Clay. Seemed like they wanted Clay. I think they wanted DeMar DeRozan, struck out there. I think they might even be in the Lauri Markkanen sweepstakes. I don't think he's a fit for them because they already got pieces there, but you never know. But what do you think about the Los Angeles Lakers? Bronny James getting drafted. LeBron gets to live his dream now, and are they positioning themselves to be a solid team out west, or is it just flash and flare and let's get the eyeballs on this product and these storylines, and we're not giving you an actual contending team?
Where do I start? Listen, Los Angeles, this Lakers squad, it's not enough, right? They haven't done anything. Rob Pelinka, You need to get off your high horse, big dog. You got to make some moves, dog. Like, why is D'Angelo Russell still on the roster? I'm just curious because we've clearly seen in regular season, I got you. If you just want him for the regular season, I got no problems. But if you are the Lakers and you are an established brand who has a reputation for the postseason, you cannot have D'Angelo Russell on your roster. As soon as he sees the Nuggets, Buddy is gone. You might as well DMP because he's not out there. He's not on the floor. He's not competing. Whatever. This ain't a D'Angelo Russell rant, but you get the picture. He doesn't fit with what this team wants to do if we're talking postseason, right? We haven't addressed another playmaker. We haven't addressed getting a big. We haven't addressed the shooting. We haven't done anything, right? I do like the drafting at number 17, Mr. Connect 4. Great scorer in the NCAA. Like he is a very good pickup, but he is a rookie. He ain't gonna help nobody anytime soon. He's got to develop, get the reps, etc., etc. So if you want to base the Lakers draft in their offseason, okay, maybe they didn't do completely nothing. But if we're talking about players who can help you right now, they have nobody, right? They have the same players from last season, and that's not going to be good enough. They need to be aggressive, and because even last year they were going out getting players left and right. Now some of them players didn't pan out, but they at least tried something new. They're giving the fans something to be excited for. How are these new players going to fit with LeBron and AD? Is this the nucleus that can somehow replicate that 2020, lore that was the Los Angeles Lakers? Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, we're not big enough. We don't shoot the ball well enough, and our two stars, they're getting older. They can't continue to shoulder the load like you continue to put that on them. So I just don't. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe there's something in the works. I thought they were in line to get DeMar DeRozan, even though he's not the greatest fit. He's still something. He can still offer more than what you're getting from your current role players. I mean, if you're holding on to Rui, I think he's a great piece, but he's also a great trade piece because his growth has been a little bit stagnant. These past couple seasons, I've advocated for them to play him more, but when it was time to get to play in the Nuggets, I didn't see no level of urgency on the defensive end. I didn't see any, let me not just sit in the corner. I didn't see any backdoor cuts. Like I'm not seeing how these role players are going to help the Lakers if everybody's just going to stay in the corner. And we get that. We understand that's like more of a coaching thing than just a player thing. But end of the moral of the story, the Lakers need to make moves, and they haven't done anything. And so I guess they're stand packed on just riding this Bronny wave, and marketing is going to go through the roof. But in terms of winning, there's not going to be a lot of that. So both LA teams are going to be some losers. Clippers are going to stink, and the Lakers are probably going to stink with them. Will they be as bad as the Clippers? Probably not, but they won't be much better. I can tell you that much, as currently constructed.
Now, you spoke about a player earlier that was once a Laker. Could he maybe get back in their good graces, Brandon Ingram?
He would be a very good option. I mean, who are we going to give up? You want to give them Reeves? You want to give them?
I mean, give him Ruby.
I mean, but in terms of the salary, I think you probably have to come off of Rui. Maybe D'Angelo Russell, which I wouldn't mind giving those two for Ingram, and probably some more is going to have to be to make that deal work. But at least those two guys, I think D'Angelo Russell's the first one out the door, and then if you have to throw in somebody, I wouldn't do Reeves, but I would do Rui, Vando, Christian Wood. We got pieces that can be, that are expendable. So
somebody will bite, and Pelicans might be. They seem like a buyer and seller, so they might sell. I mean, they got Murray. Maybe they think his fit with CJ and Zion will be beneficial, and they can move on without Brandon Ingram. But back to LeBron James. about to be 40 years old, and he's a big topic on YouTube lately, or all the time, because he's that kind of guy. He's magnetic, and there's a channel out there that I frequent because they fall in line with kind of my opinions and what I believe when it comes to the NBA. Michael Jordan fans are the best. That's the name of the channel. The owner, the content creator on there, he's a cool guy. And every weekend they have a little panel, other content creators. I don't know if you know Angry Old Hoops fan. They got Scap Attack now is on there. He's a big time YouTuber. But they all get together, and a lot of times their main focus is LeBron James. And so I've got my co-host here privy to their channel, and he's heard some of their conversations on the King. Even had Gilbert Arenas pull up to one of their sessions a couple of weeks ago, and because of where Gil aligns himself, they were somewhat anti-Gil, even though that was a big thing for him to come onto their channel and kind of give his 2 cents, which I thought was cool, and showing some love to some smaller channels, creators. So my man BigNige has been texting me back and forth about, said panels and watching them, and has his own opinion on some of the things that are being said. So just like we did with the Lakers and Darvin Ham, I just gave him the floor. I said, I'm going to stay out of your way. I'm going to stay out the lane. I'm going to let you come downhill and do what you got to do. So a lot of what they've said, and like I said, their opinions align with mine, but some of them are very, very extreme and overcritical of LeBron James, which I can be, but not to the extent that some of them go, because the guy is a great, and I'm sorry, you can't take that away from him. As much as you don't like him, you got to respect what he's done. So with that said, I'm gonna let BigNige talk about what he's heard from these past couple of panels. I know one of them was, why has LeBron James passed Kobe Bryant? And I don't even remember what the Gil conversation was, but I know a lot of LeBron talk was in there. So I'm gonna let you have your time to speak on what you've heard and your feelings towards some of what they've had to say and their opinions.
Jesus, again, where do I begin? I mean, okay, here's my thing, okay? So their whole channel is Michael Jordan Fans Are the Best, right? So if you just don't even know what they're talking about, just scroll through some of like their most recent videos, right? Everything is about LeBron James. Now, humor me for a second, but if you are a Michael Jordan fan, why do you care what LeBron James is doing to that degree? And what I mean by that, for example, one video, they took, and I counted, about 55 minutes of their time to psychoanalyze JJ Redick being the next Lakers head coach. And it's like, okay, if you're thinking about it in a vacuum, okay, maybe they're just discussing why was he picked? And then, of course, as if you're a LeBron hater, or just anybody in the basketball world, your first thing is like, oh, he's picking JJ because they did a podcast together. He's making a dumb decision to bring a guy with no experience, no credibility, and then now they're bringing up other stuff about JJ Redick on some things he may or may not have said, his shrewd behavior. He's going into a press conference cursing, and they're jumping on him about that. Like players don't, like, people can't cuss in a post game. I'm not in a press conference, and I'm not saying that's warranted, but like, these are grown men. If they're talking about, if a reporter asks somebody, JJ Redick, a question, he's allowed to answer how he sees fit. Now you're psychoanalyzing, oh, you LeBron James, you got JJ Redick a head coaching job just for them to come up and cuss and advocate that. What kind of leader are you? Like, it's LeBron's fault that JJ Redick has an opinion, that he might have cussed 1 or 2 times. Okay. So they continue to rant about that. Then they get into the Bronny James pickup for the Lakers. And of course, because they have this stigma against LeBron James, but these are Michael Jordan fans. But again, I ask, why are you so worried about what the Lakers and LeBron are doing? If you're an MJ fan, I got no problem if you're saying MJ is a better scorer, a better defender, whatever. That's your opinion. But why are we putting out all these narratives about LeBron James? Oh, he has to get his son, a job. His son is terrible. All this. Bronny James ain't do nothing to y'all. What if he were to go and look at y'all's channel and y'all are talking bad about this kid because of his daddy? But you guys are all, and these guys are older dudes. I'm sure some of them have kids. They're not going to sit here and lie to me and say they're in a position to get their son, like if they're, for example, an engineer, best of their field, and their son wants to be in that same field, and they own this billion-dollar company that has the best of the best engineers. You wouldn't get your son to come in there, learn from them, potentially work there as the best firm of engineers? Like what are we talking about here? Like, you're gonna really get on LeBron's case for the Lakers using the 55th pick to draft Bronny? Like the 55th pick is worth a damn in the NBA? You know how many 55th overall picks are still in the league in the last 5 years? It's just Bronny. And he signed a 4-year deal worth $7.9 million. And we know that's not just on his skills, that's his namesake, his work ethic. They're, investing into what he could be, which is what you do with any draft pick. You think they just gave Wemby all that money for him to just be the same player as he walked in? No. They're marketing his brand. They're building him up. They're paying you this money for what they think you can become. But again, they're not looking at that. They're only looking at, oh, LeBron, why don't you just come out and say that you got your son a roster spot on the Lakers? Why are you being a coward? This is why LeBron can't be the face of the NBA, because LeBron doesn't take accountability for nothing. And just going through all this stuff. And again, I'm just sitting there, and and some of y'all might be asking me, why as a LeBron fan are you so fixated on these Michael Jordan fans? Well, if the conversation was just about basketball, then it'd be a different thing. But if all you're doing is just slandering this man who don't even know y'all, will never ever meet y'all, but all you want to do is ridicule him, ridicule his fans, talk bad about his family. Like you guys are grown men. Like, y'all have nothing better to do than just badmouth LeBron. Like, I just don't get it, because we're not analyzing basketball. We're talking about his life decisions. Like that one dude, I don't even remember dude's name because he makes me so mad. He talks about the decision, right? And he talks about, okay, fair or not, about how it made LeBron look like a cornball. Like, so, and there's many different opinions on the decision and how LeBron, voiced his free agency, leaving Cleveland in the manner that he did, joining Bosh and Wade in Miami. Everybody has a bunch of different opinions on it. I get it. But you're going to say him doing the decision just takes him out of the top 10? Like, what are we really talking about? We're not talking about basketball. What does the decision have to do with anything with his basketball? Like his basketball talent, his God-given ability. What does the decision have to do with that? Oh, Michael Jordan would never. Kobe Bryant would never. So this ain't Kobe's career. This ain't MJ. This is LeBron's career, right? I just lose myself trying to understand, because I'm trying to put the biggest objective pair of pants I have to see, maybe for a second, to understand what these geezers are talking about. But they're not saying anything.
Oh, they gotta be geezers.
They gotta be geezers, man.
Oh, come on.
They got Gilbert Arenas on there, one of the best podcasters out there right now, popping off. They invite him on there, and they get his perspective and they say he's wrong. You're asking an actual NBA player who's been through this, who's played against LeBron, played against Kobe, seen Michael, like you're telling a guy who's seen all three of these guys live or played against them, you're saying he's wrong. LeBron shouldn't be in the top 10. He's not even in the GOAT discussion. Huh? A guy who played against him? Like, come on. Like, again, what are we really talking about? If you hate LeBron, just say that. Turn your channel into I hate the LeBron James fan club. Make yourself that. If you do that, it makes more sense on the content that you're pushing out because you're not even analyzing basketball. You're just saying, I don't like how LeBron did this. I don't like how LeBron did that. Okay, that's fine. You're well in your right to do that. But to say he's not the GOAT, to say he's not one of the greatest players to ever play the game because you don't like how the Lakers hired JJ Redick, you don't like how they got Bronny James on the roster, you don't like the decision, okay. And you want to talk about LeBron's defense in his late 30s? What, we trying to say that Kobe was playing defense in his 30s? We trying to say KD's playing defense now? Hell, Jokic don't play defense and he's not even in his 30s. Like, what are we really talking about, man? And it's people like that that really put a bad rep on the podcast and, verse because people come on here with their opinions, right? And we get that. Everybody can have an opinion. But put some stats behind it. Put some facts behind what you're saying. If you're just going to come up here and speak on emotion, these bots out here are going to actually believe what you're saying, right? You're going to educate people and give them a whole bunch of lies. Like if you want to say LeBron's not the GOAT because he's 4-6 in the NBA Finals, lead with that. You have some credibility in what you're saying. But if you just say, oh, he's a flopper, oh, he can't shoot, he joined Bosh and Wade to get his first ring, like then you're not talking basketball, man. You're just speaking. You don't like him, you never will like him, and that's fine. But don't use his life decisions as a way to justify taking him out of the GOAT conversation.
Rant over.
That's all I got for right now. I'm just trying. I'm trying to keep it YouTube friendly because I want to say some other things, but I ain't gonna say it. So I'm gonna
let's not throw too many shots. But I mean, there's parts I agree with you with, and there's parts I agree with them with. So I'm gonna stay in the middle. But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. It does get weird when you call yourself that and then you speak on the other player a lot more. It gets a little iffy there, but they don't
even say anything about MJ. No, literally, you can sit through 2 hours of their stream and they might say Michael Jordan 3 or 4 times. And it's just to say, oh, MJ would never do this, and then continue to ridicule LeBron. Go ahead. I just had to get that out there.
I mean, they to me, it's interesting content, and I've been watching it, and we've been discussing how what we've heard and what we think on those topics, and it does get a little bit. They take it places where I think let's keep it basketball, but like I said, my opinions probably align a little more than them because I guess I'm a geezer like them because they're mostly my age, so. We all kind of that's what we grew up with, so we're gonna ride that wave. But yeah, but I mean, I can see both sides, but I want you to get that off your chest because I know you've been texting me with your little thoughts. And I said, what better place than on our podcast than to and maybe you can take your services over there and maybe
I'd love to give these old geezers a lesson, man. They sound senile. Like I'm not even saying geezers because they're probably not that old, but just the garbage that's just spewing out of their mouth. They just sound like they're just not all the way there. Like it's just too much time has passed, and they're just talking like some senile old men.
Well, I can attest they're not senile old men. They have some pretty good knowledge you go to their individual channels, they do drop some knowledge and know quite a bit about basketball. They're just not fans. They're not fans of LeBron James, and they make that clear.
And that's fine. You ain't gotta be a fan, but like, just speak in terms of basketball. Like, I don't even know, because I don't remember half the dude's name, but one dude who was talking about Kobe and talking about the 2010, Lakers, and was speaking on them. He was saying, like, Kobe ended up beating that was it that Magic team that ended up that LeBron lost to, and he was saying, like, this is a 66 or 60 plus win Cavs team. They lost to Dwight Howard and the Magic, but then Kobe goes and beats them, and he says, that's a reason why Kobe is better than LeBron. Well, okay. And then that other guy, again, I don't know all their names because there's so many people in that panel. I can't keep up because I'm just seeing a whole bunch of craziness going on. But I know this guy, he held the 07 finals against LeBron James, right? Where he was unmatched, outmanned, outgunned by that San Antonio squad on the Cleveland roster that we both agree shouldn't have been there. But they got there on the greatness of LeBron James, and not just by himself. I'm not just going to give him all the credit like some fans do. His players played their role, but we understand that LeBron was the biggest reason why they got to the finals. But you want to put it on a young 20-ish, 23, 24-year-old LeBron James' shoulders that, what? They didn't win the finals? Were they supposed to beat that team? They want to talk about, MJ would have carried his team. Bull crap. MJ would not have carried that sorry Cavs team against a team like the Spurs. Baloney. Get out of here with that foolishness. Kobe at that age wasn't going to do it. MJ at that age wasn't going to do it. No player would have done that unless they could do some shadow clone jutsu and conjure up clones of themselves. That's the only way that it was going to happen. If you would have put a team of 5 LeBrons out there, could they have done it? Probably. I'd give them a better chance of beating that team than that 07 Cavs roster. So, I don't know, man. It's just the stuff that they're saying. It just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't to me.
Well, and that's, you're entitled to your opinion. Like I said, it's I listen to it weekly, and it's interesting. Some of it I agree with. Some of it, like I said, I just think they are a little too overcritical of LeBron James, but I understand, you're not a fan. You want to be a little extra critical to that player. And, and when Gil was on, I thought Gil was making some pretty good points when he was, talking about how guys aren't playing now, and pretty much saying that it's not their fault that they're not out. It's not like they don't want to be out there. It's the team telling them, you're sitting tonight because, you're DNP. You're medically not ready to be out there. We're going to make sure we're going to keep you out a few more days just to make sure you're good. And I get that. And what he was saying made a lot of sense because, this is a business. Teams have to take care of their assets. And I can attest to that because I'm a Spurs fan. When Kawhi was upset with the Spurs, he forced his way out. And we lost, not a generational player, but we lost a very good player, as we saw when he went to the Toronto Raptors, brought them their first championship. So, when teams do things and, lose that trust from your player, then that's business. They lose money because that player can force them way out now, especially with the player empowerment, force them their way out. And, that team goes from selling out arenas to, the family members being there every game, and that's about it. So, you got to be, like you said, Gilbert's done it and been there. So, they should have, I think some of them should have took some of his knowledge and kind of, let that sink in a little bit. But I get it. They feel strongly for what they believe in, and that's what they're going to do. And I can link that channel in the description if you guys want to check it out. They do it every week. They have a big panel of guys where they discuss different topics. They have a debate league right now. You missed the cutoff, but maybe next time I'll get you that debate where you can debate some of those guys and you know, see what they're made of. But
It'll be like debating a wall. I know they ain't gonna listen, and they ain't gonna let me finish. So I might as well just be debating myself in the mirror. That's all it's gonna be. But
well, you never know. You never
all
know.
means, definitely try. I wouldn't mind it, but
well,
yeah,
we'll see. We'll see in the future, and hopefully, you know, maybe you can get on there and let them know your opinions on some of the things they're talking about. So we'll see in the future, but I think that'll do it for tonight. We're back, hopefully, consistently now. You know, all the little life things have kind of passed us by, and we're back on our regular schedule. So you should see us hopefully twice a week, but definitely once a week. You will get a new podcast from us. Any parting words, BigNige, after that rant?
As always, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Definitely stay patient with us. We will give you guys the consistent content that you guys deserve. Obviously, like and comment. Subscribe if you're new. Let us know anything in the comment section if you want us to talk about, if you agree or disagree with any of our points. And comment below what's your favorite free agency move so far this offseason. And as always, you know, stay blessed, and I'll turn it back over to CW to.
All right, yeah, even if you and definitely hit us with a like, and if you enjoyed this content, please subscribe. Also, you know, if you want us to do more reaction stuff, or you want us to play some Gills Arena clips and kind of break those down, or some other content creators, just let us know in the comment section, and we will do that Hall of Fame stream that we were supposed to do like weeks ago, but was left up for weeks. That's on the back burner, but we will, and I think we're going to add a name. I know a name we should add, and he was a big part of one of their streams a couple of weeks ago, so we might want to add his name into that should they be a Hall of Famer. So check us out soon for that, and we will be back soon. We thank you guys for checking us out, and say we'll be back either this week or next week, and appreciate the view.
All right, y'all.